Are you all enjoying the show, both out there in the world and in here in the room, IRL and wherever else you are? So I'm Robin Raskin. The idea for high-tech retail was mine a number of years ago. But today I'm not even going to wear my glasses because they're really not great for shopping with yet. But they will be soon. But AR filters, virtual try-ons, virtual showrooms, smart mirrors, virtual goods, synthetic humans, even digital twins of stores. You're about to hear about all of these things now, and they're not just experiments anymore, they are real. They are being deployed with great success and a lot of investments. And they are making it possible from every part of your business, from training, inventory, customer service, purchasing, more streamlined. So I want to introduce Piers Fawkes, who will be your moderator. Piers is the founder of PSFK. If you don't know it, write it down. You should. He does some of the deepest analysis about the retail industry that there is. And his latest report, What to Expect, Retail 2023, looks at social shopping, meta. It's just a wealth of information, and it's free.
Kind, thank you.
Right?
It's nice.
It's there. Definitely download it, all of you, at home and in the room. And with that, I'm going to have Piers introduce the rest of the panel.
Yeah, wonderful. How is everybody? Good? Yeah, exciting. It's good. We're back. We're in the convention hall. We're in Eureka Park. It's crazy down there, yeah? So I'm Piers. I'm a researcher. Spend a lot of time. The metaverse is a really fascinating space for me in terms of where's it going? Is it going to turn into something? Is it going to become something? How? I think avatar influencers, online, offline commerce. There's a lot to think about and a lot to experience. So I'm super excited to have this session. I've got Phil Sage. He does design and innovation at PepsiCo. I've got Josh Shabtai. He leads a lot of the kind of teams at the innovation arm of Lowe's Labs. Yeah, you're going to correct me in a second, I know. Yes, and then we have Sonya Haskins. Sonya is the head of programming at the XR conference, AWE, and she's got a great background when it comes to kind of bridging the gap, not only between brands and people, but people and brands as well. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation over the next 30 to 40 minutes, however long I've got. Yeah? How long have we got? Yeah, exactly. But let's talk, I'm excited. I'm on the floor. There's a whole bunch of AR glasses, VR glasses, haptic suits and stuff like that. How excited are you and your organizations about kind of immersive experience?
Well, I think it's amazing, right? Well, firstly, it's amazing to be part of this conversation, right? And we're all innovators and we're all kind of fellow disruptors, right? And it's great to be back at CES. Just walking the floor, it's been terrific just to see the energy and the crowds, right? So I was downstairs in room G today, and it was just bustling. But I think it's a really exciting time for the metaverse, right? Now, you could argue, right, that it's at its most vulnerable, right? And I would argue that, the best experiences and applications have yet to be designed. Mm-hmm. And it's by design that we're going to stitch together and simulate what the future holds. It's taking them foresights. It's then being able to identify problems and, for that matter, question why them problems exist in the first place. And then we're able to create prototypes and ideas which allow us then to pressure test and learn in the environment with our consumers, both current generations and future generations. We can keep what's good, and then we can discard, what fails, right? That's the beauty of a design-led kind of position and approach. So it's an exciting time, and of course, there are a lot of installations that are doing really well right now, but like I said, watch this space.
That's great. Okay. Josh, are you watching the space?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I will, first of all, I want to like get out of my seat and go touch everybody. It's so super weird, but it's like, this is the first time I've like been on a stage
Okay, mate,
with
okay.
people, you know, no Zoom, right?
Yeah.
We're not on Zoom.
Yeah.
I will stop him.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's like a shock collar that I have.
Yeah.
No, well, tip your bartender after this. No, so, you know, at Lowe's, and if you're not familiar with Lowe's, because I know we have an international audience, you know, we're a Fortune 50 home improvement retailer based almost exclusively in North America. And, you know, look, we sell the things that make people's homes or their houses their homes, and it helps them clothe and shelter their families. If you're a pro, helps you start a small business, right? So we're really rooted in the real world of your home and your existence. And so, you know, when we think about, you know, virtual reality, mixed reality, all these different things, I think we're often looking at how can we use these technologies to help put people more in control of their environments and see a lot of potential in terms of virtual to confer expertise, confer the knowledge that you need to master your home. But I'm a lot more bullish on the augmented world and how we actually start to help each other perceive our environments in new ways while we're actively in it. So.
Well, we're going to explore that in a second. But Sonya, talk to us. You don't have the similar background, the corporate background, corporate exec backgrounds that Josh and Phil does. How did you get to kind of be in this place?
Correct. So thanks for having us here to speak with you today. I'll give you the very quick rundown of my background. In 2017, April, my oldest son was being deployed to Afghanistan. I had homeschooled for 20-some years before that. I very much stayed away from tech, drove the same vehicle for 20 years, and we didn't even have a TV a lot of that time. So he wanted me to go to Best Buy with him before he was deployed and try something called virtual reality. And I was like, that sounds like the silliest thing I've ever heard. So I went with him to Best Buy, put the headset on, and it changed my life. I literally at that moment thought, wow, we could use this for literally everything we're doing in physical reality. It could touch our lives in so many ways. So I bought the headset, bought a computer for my son, went home, started playing, ended up becoming a very well-known esports star because I just happened to be really good at gaming. And so I ended up 6 months later on the stage of Oculus Connect 4 competing in esports, and my son told me this is the most hilarious thing he's ever seen. And so from there, I just started working a lot with communities, promoting different companies like many of you guys and different people doing things in this space because I thought it was so fantastic that we could use the tools to save money, time, energy, and really it could help, you know, sustainability purpose. There's so many things that these guys are doing that are helpful, and I wanted to promote that. And from there, as a journalist, I just started doing more and ended up having this job come available in February. So now I'm head of programming, as Piers mentioned, for AWE. But one quick thing before we move on, I wanted to say, I also moved into a home that had no floors, no indoor bathrooms, and I have been building it myself for the past 3 years, thanks to Lowe's. That's a total... Man, I'm telling you, people, we love Lowe's. Like, it's my favorite store. And so it's really funny. You never know how your paths are going to cross with people.
Yeah.
But I can't wait until I can go in there and do so much more in XR. Build it there and then go buy the stuff and come home and build it at home.
Wow.
Let's talk about it.
I know.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
We're gonna remodel our home in front of a live studio
Yeah, we're
audience.
But virtually.
Yeah, virtually.
Yeah. That's, wow. Well, it's great to have you. I feel there's so much you can bring. I want you to also hopefully explain the last episode, Peripheral, if you can. You've seen that show with a VR in the future? No. You should watch it. Phil, let's go to PepsiCo. Now, PepsiCo, you own these amazing brands, which arguably kind of lend themselves, they're more playful PepsiCo brands in my mind, and they can lend themselves to an immersive experience. Can you talk about the work you've done and some of the experiences?
Yeah, I certainly can. At PepsiCo, you know, the digital teams have done a phenomenal job, right? So they've, you know, they've done a lot of test and learn, a lot of what I've just talked about in terms of taking our brands into spaces and letting them breathe authentically, right? So, like an example I can share is Back last Halloween, they did an installment, a partnership with Meta Horizons. And essentially, it was taking the mischievous side of Chester. They built Chesterville. They built. You could wander a spooky street. You could go into a haunted mansion, all in the headset, and essentially, take on these challenges, right? But what I loved most about it was we created these parallel kind of cheatable QR codes, which then you could go out and identify and capture. So that was the chase for the users, and then take them identified codes and then unlock new features in the environment, right? So that's one great example they did a fantastic job on. Another one in the Dorito space. Now, we all love Doritos, right? So, but it's very famous for its triangle, right? So the team did a great job. They did this triangle identifier, which you could go around and scan any triangle, and suddenly then you'd had a credit or an ability to win prizes. And essentially, it drove that kind of stickiness to go out in the world and explore. In parallel to that, we did install Triangle Island in Fortnite, right? So again, looping other platforms, relevant platforms into the same campaign, really cleverly done, but essentially go into where the crowd is, right? So not reinvent the wheel. It's like, how do they demonstrate themselves well and do the job they should do, but also be a lot of fun?
That's great. AV team, do you have the video? There's a video in one of the slides. Maybe you can go forward and see if it comes along. No. Let's see. Let's see if we can play that. So we can just talk to it. There's the Triangle Islands there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Fortnite has, done an amazing job. This is in the creative part of the platform. And essentially, you're walking around, you're engaging with the brand, you're doing the favorite things that you usually do when you're in the environment. But, I think the team did a fantastic job. It's a great example of how it can fit and essentially, allow it to breathe, really well.
That's great. So I understand that you used to work in toys, Hasbro?
I did, yeah. So my history is in toys and games. Yeah. So, I'm fascinated with the fun and the play dimensions. So, naturally, when we're taking on a challenge, I think leaning into that play dimension can be really powerful. It almost like brings through that stickiness or that feature. A really good kind of example I can share, and what I take kind of a little bit of an inspiration from, is that, if you think about kind of a simplistic toy, right? You look at a crane. It's got a bridge, it's got a piece of string, it's got a crank and a hook. You watch a preschooler play with that, and they will wind it in and they will release it. They will wind it in and they will release it. And it's repeat, 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 repeat. But what that little feature is doing is it's fueling and firing imagination. It's firing storytelling. And what I find fascinating is, what is that stickiness and what is that uniqueness, that simplicity in the digital world, right? That's a great challenge to solve, right? So, and I find that drives me, but certainly an area where I can take my past and start to connect the dots to what is our future state.
That's really interesting. So, Josh, Lowe's is using immersive worlds actually in a kind of different way, in a different experience. Can you just touch upon that?
Yeah, and before I do that, I do just want to say, I love the triangle, the capturing triangles in real life. As soon as you said that, I looked over at the speaker mount over there, and that triangle took on a different meaning for me right there. And actually, I would say from a marketing and attention-oriented standpoint, there's something really compelling, I would argue, and maybe it's a potential best practice, that if you do it well, you can actually recast people's awareness of objects in their real world and start to affiliate them with your brand. So now, thanks. Every triangle is a Dorito for me. So yeah, Piers, to your question. Lowe's Innovation Labs, we've been working in virtual reality since 2013, 2014. So we've been in it for quite some time. And again, really looking at it, how do we help people? How do we either help confer expertise, or how do we actually virtualize a lot of the physical remodeling experience and different things like that. I will say from the very beginning, if you can get the box on someone's head, people, let me put it this way, sometimes we talk about when people are remodeling homes, we sometimes look at our job especially for couples who are doing this together, sometimes look at our job as like helping keep marriages together, because actually remodeling a home together is actually one of the most painful things. I'm experiencing it, right now. And we actually found the minute you put a box on someone's face, you could actually start to elevate how people could talk about what they wanted to see and articulate, and you could actually create bridges. So it's always been a really compelling area. That said, putting people's face in a box, I don't think we've crossed that threshold yet, and I'm still sort of waiting to see that. And so one of the areas that's really interesting to us, regardless of what you wear on your face or not, is how do we pull the data that lives, it's attached to the real world, how do we, I don't want to say extract, but make it visible and package it in ways where people can experience it in a variety of ways. And so one of the projects we're actively looking at, if anyone's ever been in a Lowe's store, it's like 100,000 square feet, very easy to get lost. I still get lost in them. It's hard sometimes to find the thing you're looking for. We're actively going in and starting to build the infrastructure to digitize that physical real estate.
That's awesome.
Connect it with a bunch of other data points, and then let our associates experience it, in some cases in mixed reality, and we're working with Magic Leap, with the Magic Leap 2, but in others, creating new desktop applications where you are able to live in this sort of metaverse of the Lowe's store and see historical trends and all kinds of things.
So you have like a digital twin store, and you're onboarding new staff on it? So is that the plan?
Yeah, so we're in the process of building infrastructure that can enable us to digitize the entire...
So I'm not going to be sent to the wrong aisle.
I
If
hope-
it's not that happens.
I hope not.
Happens to the orange guys.
Yeah, hey, I don't... I hope not, yeah.
Yeah.
So...
Sorry, there's two different examples there, and you heard that sort of friction a moment about the kind of headset and stuff like that, but as a champion of immersive experience, especially XR, could you just talk about where you see things are going and what excites you?
Yeah, I think everything they're saying is accurate, of course, and it's great to see those perspectives. Based on what they've said, just to kind of add a little to that, as far as it being accepted, I always remind people, 40 years ago, you didn't see people walking around with cell phones either. And so it's important to, I can look in front of me right now and see every one of you has a cell phone. And so it's one of those things where you have to keep things in perspective. You have somebody, and I'm a good example of that. I didn't even use tech at all. XR, VR specifically brought me into tech. And now I tried the Magic Leap 2 today. I see so many uses for that. And, if someone's wanting to build something or show you, if I want to build you a building with landscaping and stuff, well, some people aren't able to translate what they see on a flat paper to what they might see in physical reality in a 3D environment. So for them, it's very helpful to have those glasses on to see, oh, wow, okay, now I see that. Because the thing about XR that I love the most, personally, is you have presence. Presence is key. It's important because you feel like you can see it, touch it, and you can experience it. And to that point, what you were saying about some of the experiences you guys have done, gamification and engagement, that's for you guys in this audience, that's something that I would say is one of the biggest points for you to remember. Anytime you can create engagement with your audience and gamify stuff, when you were talking about the kids rolling the thing, I was actually, before you even said that, going to give the example of when any of you who have children, if you teach children, it's through play and games, whether it's, running across the room or teaching them to walk, and you're like, what do we do when a child learns to walk? We say, yes, yeah, this is so good. And then at some point in time, people lose that joy and they start to drop it. And we say, okay, you've got to learn this now. Read this book, write this paper, do this. And that was one of the things I personally, this isn't a pitch for homeschooling. I love all types of schooling, but that's what I did for homeschooling. And what I love about VR that I can do is that pretty much everything I do, it has to be gamified, or I'm like, it doesn't interest me. So these kind of things are great for me.
I think the question for all of you is I think some of the examples you're using, especially you, Phil, is like a kind of discovery, delight, information immersive. do you see opportunities to actually transact or create commerce? I mean, or how far is that?
Totally. I mean, look, there's a timeline where AR is today. There's a timeline where XR is tomorrow and metaverse is tomorrow. For me, it's not about just it's about using technology correctly and enabling the experience, right? Which is the solution to a problem that you're trying to solve. It's not for the sake of using technology, right? So, and I think, AR has the install base, across the supercomputers that are in our pocket. We all know that. And the, critical mass with, VR will get there, right? So it's a case of, yes, there's these elevated timelines, but I think we need to be subconscious of them timelines and use them effectively.
Mm-hmm. And then Sonya, in terms of you talk about these experiences, do you see a commerce experience where actually buying stuff?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think that we're getting there, and right now we're just in the stages where you have to remember, I mean, it takes a lot of work to establish those sorts of systems and put them in place. Well, maybe right now, if you spend a ton of money to do that and it fails, that's not necessarily the best thing. When we still have very small numbers of people, speaking of everybody that could potentially be using these devices, there's still relatively small numbers of people using the devices. So I think at this point, we have to find more fun ways to get people in the devices and be working toward those sales points, toward the point where you're doing the commerce.
Josh, in terms of persuading the organization to do these things, I'd love to, and even for you, Phil, how do you encourage, or how do you kind of teach or train people? Unfortunately, we all go kind of, you should fail and everything else, but I know in large corporations, sometimes failure is failure. And, it kind of hangs around your neck a little bit. So how do you kind of teach an organization or to go and do these things?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're going to regret asking me this question. No, I'm going to say we're a difficult to replicate example because we have executive support from our CEO, our CIO, where they really understand that.
How does that happen? How do you just because they're great people, or do you have to go see them every week and harass them?
There's a lot of great personness involved, right? They truly respect where things are going. I mean, I won't lie, Facebook changing their name to Meta, regardless of what's happened since, has gone a long way in getting executives to take it seriously, and that's made our job profoundly easier. You know what I'll say, on another hand, at Lowe's Innovation Labs, we work across a variety of different time horizons and sort of production stages, right? So we are exploring early stage, what ifs with haptics and other kinds of interfaces and things like that. On the flip side, and we have a gentleman in our audience, when he puts on his white cowboy hat at the end of this, I highly suggest everyone here track him down, right? He's a product manager on our team who's actually leading something that's a bit closer to the production end of the spectrum. And by having both of those experiences real, you can help bring folks along. And that experience in particular is one in which we're leveraging LiDAR on your iPhone Pro.
They're the kind of radar sort of technology.
Yes, time-of-flight laser, and basically it lets you scan your room within the Lowe's app and actually start to get an estimate for flooring. So it actually pulls you down the purchase funnel. So we have a combination of experiences that I think really help show, there's real application on the devices of today.
Yeah.
That will set us up for whatever comes to.
I mean, Phil, because I think, some of us might be believers, but we got to go back to our corporations on Monday and tell people what we saw and why it's interesting.
Yeah, well, kind of a bit of a build on that, right? So, in terms of, it really does start at the top, right? So, we're very lucky and fortunate to have a fearless leader in our Chief Design Officer, Mauro Poscini, and, he is all about pushing the boundaries of design, and not just the boundaries, but doing it in the right way, acting with kindness, building relationships, it's not just one team, we're one team, holistically, right? So that's a cross-functional, vertical slice, however you want to frame it. And without that buy-in, without that deeper level of partnership, it's not going to go anywhere, right? It's also about, balancing risk, right? So there's shorter-term, easy-win projects, and then there's more ambitious ones, which are longer burn, right? It's getting that right ratio, so you can't compare apples to apples, project to project, because they're very differently set up. So I think, yes, there's that top-down message. And I heard something recently from Michael Tushman, who's a Harvard professor. I encourage you to read his latest book. But, he kind of said something which really touches me, because it's what I really believe in that partnership is the new leadership, right? And without that deeper level of partnership across the organization, then them new things can't really percolate. And so we're very lucky in our design and innovation organization that we approach it in what I would believe is the right way in order to push the business along and grow it as we think we can grow it.
I heard you even do practical things such as metaverse video calls or team calls. Is that right? Something like that?
Yeah, we have to immerse ourselves in our consumer's future state, right? So on our stand-up desks, we have, our Oculuses, and then we'll dial into, my colleagues in the UK office. And, again, it's about, putting yourself in the shoes of the tools and then having the conversation. And, I'm excited what Meta Horizons and what Mesh for, Microsoft Teams is going to provide. And you may have seen kind of the announcements with headoffice.space and what they're doing with LinkedIn and Microsoft. I mean, it's amazing, right? So that they're really stretching the boundaries, and I think it's our duty to be putting ourselves in them shoes and use the tools, right? So, but to your point earlier, Josh, otherwise we'd be on Zoom all the time, right?
Yeah. Well, just real quick, I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but remind me at some point, we took our entire ELT, we had a 2-hour meeting in Magic Leap, which was terrifying because we decapitated one of them in the virtual world or whatever. But man, it's you really do, when pulling them into that environment. I think back to your other question, helps them understand.
Yeah. And Sonya, you think you have a point, yes?
Yeah, I was going to say there are a lot of people in this room, and I'm sure that your budgets are going to differ, for example, and you're going to have different levels of people here, C-suite leaders and people who actually have to ask for the money, those kind of things. So it's important to remember when we're talking about these things, everybody's not going to be able to do the same thing. You all can't go out, and shouldn't, in my opinion, go out and expect to create a metaverse around your brand or a platform or a program or an app around your brand. This is really important because I talk to a lot of companies at AWE. People come in, they'll ask me questions like this, and they're getting quotes for massive amounts of money to build them a world or whatever. And it's just kind of like, yeah, but why would people go there? Or, so you have to think very practically. When he was talking about the triangles, for example, you saw that immediate effect of him looking that direction toward the speakers and saw the triangle. When I was talking about Lowe's, you saw that immediate connection from a personal story, and we're talking about Lowe's. So when you start to think about putting yourself out there, your brand out there in the metaverse, this is more what it's about when it comes to me for the brand, about awareness and recognition. You can do that in a lot of places without spending thousands and thousands of dollars, okay? So be creative, think outside the box, and if you can do things like what they're doing, set up your own training or create your own apps that have these fun engagement programs and stuff, that's fantastic. If you can't, there are other ways to do these things as well and do it a little more affordably if that's your budget. Just don't give up and find a way to make it happen because you're trying to create brand awareness. Remember, people see those names more, then they're still going to become aware of your brand. It's still achieving the same result, which is people are aware of you and want to buy your product.
Yeah. Okay, so there are all these terms, AR, VR, mixed reality, XR, which could be the same thing.
MR.
MR. Where, as we think about, the world seems very short-termist right now. We need to think about where we're going to spend the money, where we're going to do our bets next year, this coming year, and into the next 18 months, yeah? What do you think are kind of the hot technologies, and how should so people in this room actually apply those technologies?
I think it's the methodology you apply to design the experience, right? So, as a classic industrial design, human-centered designer, we use the 3-lens thinking to approach a problem to come up with a solution, right? But I would encourage you to push that even further, apply a fourth lens, which would be a sustainability lens as well, right? So not only are you putting the feasibility, viability, and the desirability, but then you're approaching from the get-go using this rich digital platforms that we have around us to work towards, us working with the planet as well, right? So I would say that it's about, design-led thinking and embracing the right tools, the right minds, and the right processes to tackle them problems.
Great. Okay, that wasn't the answer I was expecting, but I like it a lot. Now we're going to save the planet with the AR. Everybody.
That's actually for AWE this spring.
Yeah, please.
That's our initiative is sustainability, save the planet with XR.
You save the planet with
That's
XR.
literally our, it's.
Yeah, we don't need to sell anything.
It's
Let's just
great.
save the planet.
Yeah, did you know that?
No,
Yeah, isn't that cool?
I had no idea.
That's great. And Josh, any bets? Any technologies you think people should be investing in?
I mean, I feel like I always want to say the provocative thing. I just be like, don't invest in VR right now. Just like focus on generative AI or something like that. It's cheaper. It's going to disrupt your business and create new opportunities, probably faster and that are really more long lasting. The other thing here is like, there's the pathway of experimenting in a variety of these channels for marketing purposes, which is valuable and all that stuff. Like for my money, I'm trying to think about how is this going to completely transform our business and transform how people shop for their homes and build their homes, and things like that. And so, for my money, the things to really look at is people have these really superpowered devices. And you've got frameworks like ARKit and now the Room Plan API that Apple puts out. I mean, you've got all these really compelling things to work with where you can create persistent experiences that whether you have a thing on your head or not, people can start to have an affinity. You can start to show the value of what happens when you have a digital layer that's completely overlaid on top of your world. So I'd focus there, and then I'd say forget the rest if you have a limited budget and just work on generative AI.
Well,
sorry,
it's okay.
this panel is over. No,
it's okay. Phil, Josh, Sonya, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming and joining this, and hopefully you got a lot out of it as well, as much as I did. Thank you so much.
Thanks.